Hi, the drumming man here, and tonight I'm going to share some of my story about the experiences I had with ayahuasca in Colombia in the Amazon. But before I start that, I just want to point to something because it doesn't want to be taken lightly of flying out to South America and just haphazardly working with plant medicine. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing this. A lot of people ask me on the Mind Body Spirit events about my story, and obviously part of my story, and when I'm talking about the drums that I work with, part of that story is working in the Amazon, and they sort of want to know more and they get excited by it, and I can understand that. But I just want to go through a couple of things of how powerful this medicine is, and one must be sort of fairly cautious around it. So just if we step back, where things took a turn for me was I went for a therapy session in and around mid-2019, and this is, by the way, a very shortened version. And this incredible lady who worked with me used hypnosis as a modality of working with people in talking therapy. And when I walked in, for whatever reason, she very quickly had to put me on the couch as my system was beginning to open very quickly. She knew that, I didn't really know what was happening. And she guided me to an experience that I had as a child, and then guided me through that healing process. And that was pretty profound. I was crying, and it was a moment in time with my parents, and I must have been about 4 or 5. And that memory had flicked across my space quite a few times during my life, but I didn't really know what it was. And it was one of those things like we do, push things down. And anyway, she took me back to that and guided me through that healing process. And I thought I'd only been on her couch for about 15 minutes, but I was trembling, crying, and really releasing this deep experience that was trapped in my system. And when I sat up, I was a bit lightheaded, and she got me to stay where I was, just sat down. And I looked at the clock, and 2 hours had actually gone by. It was just absolutely amazing. So that was a very wow experience. That was really my huge awakening, and that sort of gave me hunger for more. I began wanting to know more and more, and I then hopped on with 2 amazing individuals online in late 2019, and these guys are in the States. And as I paid for a program, and as I was working through that program, they kept dropping in conversation about plant medicine, namely ayahuasca, and I had actually no idea what it was. And at first I was a bit curious, but it sort of, I wasn't against it because I was learning to accept everything in life. But then I began realizing I was getting called to actually go with them. They were meant to be going out in April 19, and it was going out to Colombia, to where they've been quite a few times. And the plant medicine out there is ayahuasca, but the shamans call it Yage. That's spelled Y-A-G-E. So I booked with them, and we were due to travel in April 20. So you can imagine what happened. We didn't actually get there. So I then began working with them and doing all my own inner work. And so fast forward to 2020, October 22, when we finally travelled. That was when we got out there. But during that time, I'd done a lot of inner work and healing on myself with these guys. The programs that I worked with at that time were, for me, and also there are a lot of students that go through now, and it's very profound, but that was meant to be part of my path. That's what I'm trying to point to. And these guys won't take any students out there with them unless they're fairly well along on the journey of healing, because these are powerful experiences. And I wouldn't invite anybody that doesn't understand that this medicine is very powerful. and you've actually no idea what you're going to experience. You are actually opening yourself up to dark and light energies as well. I did experience both while I was out there, and it's not to be taken lightly. I was called, and I think the medicine will call to you, and not from the mind, not all excited and giddy, I want to do this. It's something deep inside that's like, okay, and there was no emotion around it. There was no excitement, there was no apprehension. It was just, oh, okay, this is part of my path. And after that first initial opening with the release I had, there was more and more of coming in, of drawing me down this path. So just to give you a short snapshot, on day one was the first ceremony. The shamanista, which was a lady in her 80s, began inviting the group one by one to take Yage, and I was the last one in the whole group. There were 9 ladies, the 2 brothers that had coached me, and myself, and I had my cup full, and it tasted okay. It sort of tasted like licorice, and I thought, that's not what I'd been led to believe when I was listening to the stories and the integration that we were doing. I thought it was going to taste horrible because that's what I'd sort of been led to believe. And when I take the medicine, I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll just sit and meditate. I'll just sit quiet and just see what happens. And after a while, I don't know how long it was, I began to feel quite nauseous. I think somebody sort of pointed to it was very quiet for a couple of hours. And we're all in this round hut in this amazing sacred garden called a Maluka. And I stepped outside onto this sacred ground, and it is a beautiful garden, and the ground's amazing. And it's circled off, and it's just for healing and ceremony. And I actually thought I was going to purge, but I didn't. But as I was kneeling on the floor, feeling really nauseous and thinking, well, come up and get out, I felt something sort of rise out of my shoulders, and it was quite huge. And I felt like my whole back was growing and something was being pulled out my back. So hold that thought. I didn't realise or know what it was at the time. So I went back inside and closed my eyes, and my third eye just burst wide open, and I was watching from watching from another place. It was like not watching a movie, it was like stepping into it, and I was there. I was not participating, but I could see everything. And I began to see amazing colours and movement, and it was just incredible. I actually had no fear, and it was just like, wow, what's actually happening? It was like just an amazing experience at that point. And this went on for a little while, and then I opened my eyes, and I had to go back outside at this time because I really knew I was going to purge. And the retching came from the depths of my soul. But what is interesting is I just had liquid for breakfast, and of course you'll have bile in your stomach, and you know what happens when you throw up and you've nothing in your stomach. Bile and whatever liquid will come up. Nothing came up except a small amount of tiny white crystals that was in this clear liquid, and I was looking at them on the ground, and I thought, wow. Anyway, I moved back into the Maluka, and I closed my eyes, and I was back in with my third eye wide open, and I was seeing all these amazing colours, and then it began to feel like I was seeing colours in all these different realms. So if you imagine circles with realms, it was as though I was going into different realms, and all these things happened at the same time. And then I felt my left hand, and it felt like a snake, and I was listening to this voice as it was talking to the shamanista. It was sharing something with her. And then I began to realise it was actually dragon energy that was blowing around the room. And it wasn't, so hold the thought of that and join it up with what I said about these wing feeling coming out of my back. This is where it got really interesting, and it does sound a bit bizarre if you're not in the spiritual space, but and you've probably clicked off by now if you're not in the spiritual space, but that's okay. So the ones that are meant to be listening will be listening. And so so later on, when I came back from there, I did connect that that's what I was feeling was wings coming out my back. And this energy was being blown like around the room, and I was watching as this dragon was blowing away like bad energy and was healing. And it was what people were holding on to in the group, and what they'd arrived with, and it was like blowing it. I could see it. And then after a while, I heard the daughter of the shamanista begin blowing a mouth organ, and that sound drew me like, it was just like, you would imagine the Pied Piper of Hamelin and all the rats following him. I was just like, had to follow this music, and she was tapping a staff on the ground. And again, I was watching all this going on, but I was sort of in it at the same time, but not participating, just watching what was going on around me. And this part of it began to make me feel nauseous again. But I followed the daughter out into the garden, and she then began teaching me how to ask for light and joy. Give me wisdom. I want to receive wisdom. And I could feel energy flowing through. And so she was working with me for quite a while outside. And then I went back into the Maluka, and I was sat in a lotus position. You have to bear in mind, these are bullet points. This is all through a day. And then this Native American chanting began, like, like, hey, 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 that sort of thing. And my legs were bouncing, and I could just feel this energy in the whole room, and my whole body was vibrating with the chanting. Now, you have to bear in mind, at this stage, some of the others were having more cups of Yage. I'd only had one, and these guys were having a second cup. And I'm like, because that's what they were instructed. If they felt it wearing off, have some more. And I certainly didn't want any more, not with what was going on. So the chanting was going on. Then I was given a round crystal ball, and I can't remember what it was called. And it emitted an amazing light. And this light, I kept rolling this ball on my stomach, because I was sat down still in lotus a bit, but I was leant back against the wall. And I was working on the others, and it was working on me at the same time. It was just healing. And these words just kept coming out of my mouth, talking to the lady, the daughter. And I was telling her, this voice was telling her how me was beginning to understand what all this was about. And I was beginning to remember. And one or two were sort of been drawn to this voice and come to see and sit in front of me, and this voice was giving them messages. So this went on for like most of the day. Anyway, I began to get really drained and tired. This was probably around about 3-4 o'clock. So I went back to off the sacred ground and went back to sit in the like where everybody ate, and it was like a one big room, and just sit and relax there. Some of them stayed down around on the sacred ground, but for me, I was being drawn away. I needed the quiet, because some of them were playing music at this stage. So then day 2 came along, and more medicine was administered, and this voice began chanting again. And somebody else, another one in the group, began joining in with that chanting. And this voice kept coming through me and repeating, this human doesn't need medicine. And I wasn't quite sure what they meant by that, but I do now. It's meaning that my third eye, I can work with my third eye, and I can journey shamanically without having medicine. And that's how I help people heal now, with going into an altered state of consciousness. And I was then given a wand at this stage, and I was instructed to hold it high above my head. It was in my right hand, and in the other hand was one of these palm fans. And the arm with the wand began to feel this energy coming down my arm. It was really powerful. And I was guided around the Maluka doing some sort of hand movements. And again, I was watching all this through my third eye, but I can't remember the full detail. And I only want to give you the bullet points, because I don't want to start talking about others that were receiving healing. But outside, one of the group was in distress, and I was taken outside by the daughter, and she put me on the floor, still with wand and fan in my hand. And I just automatically knew I had to close my eyes, and I was looking at this dragon, and it was talking to her for quite a while. And she was frightened, and it calmed her down, and it was talking to her. And it was doing some sort of healing that I couldn't actually see. I don't think I was meant to see it as the human, but I could see this amazing dragon in a different realm and what it was doing. And it was really working with this girl, and it was as though it was working on some of her past lives as well. That was sort of the sense I was getting. And I don't know how long had gone by, but there was quite a long time gone by, and I kept opening my eyes and closing my eyes, and when I was opening my eyes I was coming back into me, and then when I was closing my eyes I was going back into my third eye, into this film, if you like, this whole experience that was going along. And I was guided to stand up and actually purge on behalf of this girl. Well, I thought the first bit of purging was bad, but I didn't think this was going to stop. It started challenging. There was voices coming out. This voice come out of my mouth saying, "Is that all you've got?" in a very aggressive manner. And then there was this deep retching, and it felt like my feet were actually coming out of my mouth. And I just knew it was on behalf of the girl, to help her through and to help the healing. And I don't know how long it went along for, and eventually all the healing and what work needed to be done by this dragon energy had been done. And I'm no idea of time, but I knew when I stood up, I was exhausted. I got sweat dripping off my face. My t-shirt was wet through. And this was out, bear in mind, if you remember, this was outside in the garden. And the sun was shining, and then something absolutely incredible happened. I still had the wand in my right hand and the fan in the other, and then both of my arms began to lift up, and I wasn't doing it. My arms were relaxed and they just began to rise above my head, and I closed my eyes and I just saw this beautiful, amazing, soft white light. You can't describe it. Unless you've seen it, you couldn't describe it. I suppose it's what people would describe if they're having a near-death experience, when they see themselves going to this white light. I wasn't being drawn to it, I was just seeing it, and it was quite an amazing, such a beautiful feeling, very loving feeling. So I'm going to close it at that. That's 2 days of ceremony. I did 2 more, and interestingly, first day I had 1 full cup, and on day 2 I had a third, and the other 2 remaining days I still only had a third, and people are having 2 and 3 cups in a day. And for whatever reason, I've sort of joined the dots now. I don't need, or didn't need, any more medicine for me to get into that space of understanding and what I deem as spirit was showing me. And I'm not going to go into any further into day 3 or 4, because it did involve some of the group in some quite profound healing work. And whatever was coming through me was working on them. And out of integrity, it's quite personal to them and me. And I don't want to be sharing that. So I just wanted to put that together. And if you want, this is for entertainment purposes, of course. We have to say that. And that's what it's about. But you can see how powerful this medicine is, and all our experiences are very different. You will not go and have an experience that I had, and I will not go and have experiences that the other people had. Some were having healing experiences, some were just having a great time with the medicine. It was just showing them some amazing things, but mostly the medicine does heal, and she shows you things that you may not want to see, and it can be quite painful. I was watching that happening as well, and that's why whatever was coming through me was supporting these people, and it was healing. So there you go, for entertainment purposes only, folks. That's what I've just shared with you. Hey, if you want to know any more, or you want some advice, then by all means contact me. You know where I am, but that's what set me on the path to have these forms of healing abilities, such as these incredible drums behind me, which are a portal for healing energies that come through them, that I'm very attuned to, and the more I work with them, more powerful they get. And also I'm able to do some spirit-led with shamanic practices, some spirit-led healing as well, which is what I now understand when they said I don't need medicine. That's what they were pointing to. So I want to leave that with you. Thank you for listening, and I hope that's helped you. If you want any more info, you'll find me at stephenbones.com, and wherever you are in the world, enjoy your journey. And you're all amazing beings, even if you feel sometimes you're not, you are. And you can, those of you that know me perhaps understand now why I have this amazing conviction to follow this path even more, because that really did open my eyes to and connect with me with spirit, and it keeps getting stronger and stronger. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again on Wednesday Wisdom. This is the drumming man tuning out. Can't get my words out now. Okay, take care.